It all begins by explaining that the race to achieve immortality has taken three main paths. The first is human cyborgs enhanced by cybernetic technology. Second, synthetic beings endowed with advanced artificial intelligence. And finally, hybrid entities that combine technological elements with human consciousness. The supremacy of one of these models will determine which corporation will exercise absolute dominion over the known universe. We are in the year 2120. In this context, a long-range mission scheduled to last 65 years is being developed, bound for a region of space located 1,295 million kilometers from Earth aboard the Maginot ship. Owned by the powerful Weyland-Yutani Corporation, the crew slowly begins to awaken from cryogenic sleep. While sharing a meal after their resuscitation, the crew members converse among themselves. One of them mentions with concern that Mr. Tang watches them closely during cryogenics. In the middle of the conversation, another explains that everyone on board works for Weyland-Yutani, a corporation that currently controls North America, South America, Mars, and Saturn. Dynamic, for its part, has control of the Moon. In total, there are 4 large corporations that dominate the solar system. One of them is Prodigy, specialized in the development of synthetics and artificial intelligence. It was founded just 10 years ago by a young visionary, Boy Cavalier, considered the youngest billionaire in history. The other 3 companies have not yet been mentioned, but their influence is also considerable. Intrigued by the time remaining until they reach their destination, the crew members ask Mr. Tang how long it will take until they arrive on Earth. He replies that the arrival is scheduled in approximately 4 months. However, the captain expresses concern about the excessive fuel consumption and asks the crew along with Mr. Tang to review the ship systems to determine if any can be deactivated without compromising the mission. One of the crew members suggests getting rid of the Chibuzzo specimens by releasing them into space and closing the ship's zoo, since these beings cause him considerable fear. The captain, who turns out to be a synthetic, reminds him that the specimens are precisely the central objective of the mission. Another crew member replies with bitterness, saying that it is easy for him to talk like that, being a machine, because due to those creatures he has lost many men. In a later scene, we see one of the crew members feeding the specimens while the rest of the team prepares to return to cryogenics. We then see a preview of the events to come. The specimens manage to escape, which triggers a series of catastrophic events. We are also shown the appearance of an alien creature running, foreshadowing the chaos that is about to unfold. Meanwhile, on Earth, specifically on the Neverland Research Island owned by the Prodigy Corporation, we meet Marcy Hermit, a girl with a terminal illness. There, Marcy has an intimate conversation with her mentor, a synthetic named Kirsch, who accompanies her in the moments before a momentous event in her life. Later we see Marcy alongside Dr. Dame as they both enter a highly specialized laboratory. Inside, there are 2 beds, one of which occupies the center of attention. On it lies an inert body that immediately catches Marcy's eye. It is then that we understand the magnitude of what is about to happen. The girl is about to become the first hybrid in history by transferring her consciousness into a synthetic, adult-like body. At that moment, Boy Cavalier, the young and enigmatic founder of Prodigy, appears. He approaches Moss and asks him a question. "Do you know who Neil Armstrong was?" "An astronaut," she answers. "Not just an astronaut," Boy replies solemnly. "He was the first human to set foot on the Moon, and you too will be the first, although in a completely different sense. You will be the first hybrid." Marcy, still processing the weight of her words, tells Dr. Dame that she wants to see her brother. The doctor tenderly replies that she will soon be able to see him, although he will not be able to see her. Marcy, with a mixture of sadness and uncertainty, asks if this is because what they will do to her must remain a secret. The doctor nods gently. Finally, Marcy lies down on one of the beds and carefully observes the body next to her and comments that it looks a lot like Wendy. Then she closes her eyes and the process begins. During the transfer, her mind is flooded with memories of her childhood, fragmented images of a past she is about to leave behind. Once the transfer is complete, the new entity with the adult synthetic body to which the consciousness has been transferred, Marcy's conscience, appears sitting on a mountain. Dr. Dame calls her by her new name, Wendy. We then see her jump from a considerable height, landing unharmed. We soon discover that Wendy possesses extraordinary abilities, including tremendous strength and superhuman speed. Later, Wendy meets Dr. Dame and Kirsch again. They both ask her how she feels in her new body. Wendy, still bewildered, replies that everything feels strange. While examining her body, she comments somewhat modestly that her breasts move a lot when she runs. The doctor explains that she now inhabits an adult body, and Wendy asks why they chose a body like that. Kirsch intervenes, pointing out that synthetic bodies do not have the ability to grow. Dr. Dame then asks her about her emotions. "Do you feel happy, or maybe sad?" Wendy is silent for a moment before answering, "I don't know." Kirch in a pedagogical tone explains that human bodies produce various hormones such as dopamine, serotonin, estrogen, and testosterone that regulate mood, but since she no longer produces these substances, her emotional experience may be altered. The doctor adds that they have tried to emulate the hormonal processes typical of adolescence to help her adapt, although it may be necessary to increase the intensity of these simulations. Before leaving, the doctor informs her that other children have arrived at the complex. They will also go through the same procedure she has gone through. However, they will need guidance and emotional support to face the process without fear, so she asks Wendy if she would be willing to help guide them through this transition. Can she be like an older sister to them? Dame asks with a hopeful smile, and Wendy accepts. Wendy addresses the children who are also facing terminal illnesses just as she did in the past. She speaks to them with hope, assuring them that they can be as big and strong as her. Meanwhile, Boy watches from a distance. The curious children ask Wendy if she was also sick before, to which she replies that she was about to die. Everyone was very sad, but suddenly the genius Boy appeared and offered her a second chance. He promised that he would make her feel like new and gave her a rejuvenated child's body, even better than her original. This is how Wendy became the eternal child. Intrigued, the children ask her why they don't perform the same procedure on the minds of adults. Wendy explains that adult minds are too rigid to adapt to such a change, while child minds have the ability to adjust easily. An anxious girl asks Wendy when they will be able to return home, but Wendy replies that such a return is not possible. There is no longer a home to return to. The children then begin their transformation into their new synthetic bodies, now in their adult stage. Meanwhile, in the in-space, a technical failure compromises the Maginot ship's navigation, directing it toward an inevitable collision with Earth. Some specimens are released, and an adult xenomorph kills most of the crew on the bridge. The captain programs the ship to crash into the planet. A terrified crew member begs him to open the door as something is approaching, but the captain, imperturbable, reinforces the door and ignores her. The xenomorph quickly approaches the crew member and ends her life. The monster manages to reach the control bridge where the synthetic captain is faced with the threat. He takes refuge in an imminent impact compartment. Just a few seconds later, the ship crashes into Earth. The scene changes and shows us New Siam, the city of prodigy. Although it does not seem very different from today's world, trains can be seen circulating, people traveling in boats, all surrounded by imposing skyscrapers. In this scenario, we find Joe. Wendy's brother Joe is a doctor, and also a corporate soldier in the service of Prodigy. He believes his sister is dead, but Wendy can only observe him from a distance through a screen. While Joe watches an Ice Age movie, they both silently reminisce about how they used to watch it together when they were kids. The next day, Joe is playing basketball with his teammates when suddenly they all see a ship approaching at high speed, seemingly out of control, and threatening to crash into some nearby buildings. Without wasting time, Joe and a group of soldiers head to the impact site with the intention of rescuing possible survivors in a nearby shopping center. Upon arrival, they discover the wrecked ship, and along with a platoon of soldiers decide to enter to assess the situation. Upon inspecting it, they recognize that it belongs to the Wayland-Yutani Corporation, and jokingly they ask if there will be any reward for returning it. Inside the control room, the captain emerges from an escape pod. From there, the system informs them that the ship has been boarded, although he doesn't know the current status of the cargo. While reinforcements arrive, he decides to head to the armory to secure the ship and maintain control of the situation. In another scene, we see Wendy talking to Arthur. Meanwhile, Wendy watches the videos from New Siam security cameras and witnesses with dismay the chaos left by the ship's impact. Among the images, she can see her brother Joe. News of the accident also reaches Boy, who immediately asks if there are any survivors. He is informed that there are no communications and that the main tower may have been damaged by the ship. However, they confirm that there are personnel on the ground. Boy orders a rescue operation to begin according to the level of arrival, but requests that no information be released until the true extent of the damage is known. He also firmly declares that the ship now belongs to them. A man warns him that Wayland-Yutani will not take that statement well, but Boy, without showing concern, responds with disdain, "Let them sue us if they want." Given the gravity of the situation, Wendy volunteers to participate in the rescue mission. Along with other hybrids, she explains that they were created for this. They are strong, fast, and resilient. He, referring to Boy, created them, and they are trained in both rescue and cleanup. Boy asks why she wants to get personally involved. It is then that Kirsch intervenes and reveals that Wendy's brother Joe is a medic in the tactical unit and is inside the collapsed tower. Boy is momentarily impressed by Wendy's human-like facial expressions and comments that anyone could swear she is, to which Wendy resolutely replies, "I am human, Finally, boy gives the order to send the group of hybrids as part of the operation in order to evaluate how they respond under extreme stress conditions. He demands that all technicians be on alert, and that their brain functions, emotions, physiological responses, and physical performance be monitored. Kirsch objects, pointing out that the hybrids are not yet fully trained, and are still merely prototypes. However, boy replies that in that case it will be his responsibility to keep a close eye on them. Wendy, he immediately runs to the area where the hybrids are located to inform them that a starship has just crashed and that an urgent rescue mission has been activated. At the news, all the hybrids accompanied by Kirsch prepare without delay and board one of Prodigy's ships ready to deploy on the ground and fulfill their objective. Meanwhile, in another sector, a group of soldiers reaches the specimen containment area. There, a worm-like creature stealthily slithers up the neck of one of the soldiers. Just at that moment, the captain appears and points his gun at them, forcing them to surrender. He leads them to the laboratory where he orders them to handcuff themselves to a tube. One of the soldiers tries to reason with him, assuring him that they won't say anything if he lets them go. He promises that they will pretend they never saw anything. The captain, however, ignores the plea and goes to the second soldier to interrogate him. "Do you want to know where boy is?" The soldier, evidently nervous, replies that he does not know through the control system. The captain informs him that the specimens remain intact and that he will now proceed to locate the fugitives. The soldiers beg him to release them, but the relentless captain withdraws without paying attention to their pleas. Meanwhile, another team of soldiers arrives at the cryogenics area where they discover a body with a large hole in the abdomen. The scene speaks for itself. An alien has violently emerged from inside the corpse. Without wasting time, the soldiers begin to follow the trail of blood left by the creature in its escape. Meanwhile, in the laboratory, the situation becomes even more serious. One of the handcuffed soldiers is attacked by the worm-like creature. The creature penetrates his body and bites him fiercely, ending his life. The second soldier does not fare any better. He is also attacked by another creature with no possibility of defending himself. Aboard Prodigy's ship, Wendy travels with the other hybrids. During the journey, Kirsch breaks the silence with a disturbing reflection. He asks Wendy did know that in the past humans were prey. She explains that human life used to be short and dominated by fear. Over time, the human brain evolved. They learned to make tools to master nature, to build extraordinary machines, and finally to conquer space. They believed then that they had stopped being prey, or at least they convinced themselves of it, but according to Kirsch, in the animal kingdom there's always something bigger or smaller that can devour you without warning. Being an animal, she says, is that being born, living, dying. Wendy, however, refuses to accept that fate for her brother. Firmly, she assures him that Joe will not die. Kirsch looks at her, and with a calm voice replies that of course he will. Everyone dies, whether from an injury, an illness, or old age, all generation after generation. The only thing they can do, says Kirsch, is observe and record names in history, but Wendy does not give up. Determinedly, she states that nothing will happen to Joe. She will save him. Joe, along with the Siberian soldiers and Rashidi, advance in search of survivors without them noticing. A xenomorph follows him closely. Upon entering a laboratory, they find corpses in disturbing conditions. Joe analyzes one and concludes that they died from asphyxiation caused by toxins. Checking a screen, he discovers that one of the bodies had a foreign object in the digestive tract. The case was registered with a code, but now the object has disappeared. Despite the discovery, Siberian insists on continuing. The forensic analysis will be the task of others. Worried, he tells Rashidi that they face something alien. Rashidi, ironic but tense, replies that things are getting better. They both go down the stairs without noticing that someone is stalking them. Meanwhile, Dr. Dame watches videos of the girl, who enthusiastically says she's ready to overcome any challenge. Although she admits to feeling scared, she believes it will be worth it. Boy enters and comments that children have immense potential. Dame tells him that they don't just seek achievements but a transformation, helping them become their best version. Boy thoughtfully mentions a common fear about artificial intelligence, that brilliant machines create better ones until they displace humans. He explains that the Prodigy project seeks the opposite. Maximize human potential before machines dominate. It's a race of intelligence, Dame states. Asks him, what if they stop being human? What do we gain? He then adds that they achieved the unthinkable, eradicating death, but now they must improve life, or they will only create immortal consumers. Boy responds that money is not what motivates him. According to him, people often believe that millionaires only think about wealth or feeding their ego, but his true desire is another: to be able to converse with someone smarter than him. Just for once, he longs to reach the pinnacle of knowledge and debate with someone capable of expanding his mind. The doctor asks him if he really thinks the children will achieve that. He replies that maybe, but that he at least hopes to offer Wendy a brain that works like a supercomputer, along with training from the greatest geniuses in the world. Only then will she finally be able to have a truly interesting conversation. Then we see Wendy aboard the ship accompanied by the other hybrids. Slightly nibs Smee, Curly and Tootles amidst the expectant silence, slightly asks her if she thinks they will find dead people. Wendy firmly, but not harshly, asks her not to think about that. Slightly persists and then asks what Wendy is thinking. After hesitating for a moment, he quietly confesses a secret. He has a brother who works as a doctor in the city, and right now he must be there trying to save lives. He worries deeply because his brother is not like them. He is not premium. He could break, bleed, or burn. He is vulnerable. Wendy admits that it was she who insisted that he stay, and now knowing that he could be hurt, she has decided to go look for him. Slightly, with a mixture of melancholy and empathy, tells him that his father died of the flu, and that he was cremated shortly after. Sometimes he wonders if he really died, or if they burned him without being sure. The thought haunts him. At that moment, Kirsch interrupts to order them to prepare. Slightly trying to comfort, Wendy tells her not to worry, that they will find her brother. Smee, curious, asks who they are talking about. Slightly answers naturally that Wendy's brother is a doctor. Wendy, surprised and uncomfortable, immediately scolds him. It was supposed to be a secret. Meanwhile, inside the building, Joe's group faces a new difficulty. The stairs are destroyed. With no other option, Rashidi decides to jump to the other side of the gap. Up close by Siberian, the latter almost loses her balance upon landing, but Rashidi catches her just in time, saving her from falling. Only Joe remains to cross, but he freezes. The jump scares him. At that moment, looking up, he notices an opening in the ceiling, and something moves in the shadows. Quickly, he aims his gun just as an alien emerges from the darkness and attacks him. Instinctively, Joe jumps into the void to escape, but hits the concrete and falls heavily to the floor below. Despite the impact, he manages to get up quickly and begins to run through the corridors while the alien relentlessly pursues him. Finally, Joe reaches an elevator and manages to arriving just in time to close the doors. Now safe, she tries to communicate with the rest of the team via radio but gets no response. Only the sound of her labored breathing fills the small metal space. Next, we are presented with a flashback. One day earlier, Joe is in the administrative offices to follow up on his resignation request. However, the system informs him that he still has 7 months left on his active contract. Joe clarifies that he is not requesting a permanent resignation, but a special leave of absence, as he made a promise to his father before he passed away. He would resume his medical studies. It is at this moment that we discover that his father died the previous year. This entire exchange is discreetly observed by Wendy from a monitor, but while she watches, she is also being observed. Some team members comment that perhaps it was a mistake to give her access to these transmissions because they seem to distract her. However, the doctor maintains that on the contrary, it comforts her and gives her a significant emotional connection. Joe continues to explain that he has been accepted into a medical program on Mars and that classes begin in just a month. He begs that they consider his request, acting with compassion, or in an ironic tone, they will have to face his fury. This expression immediately makes Wendy associate with a character from Ice Age, which prompts her to intervene and briefly respond to her brother. Arthur, one of the supervisors, is surprised. He points out that Wendy has rewritten the system code in some way to be able to interact. Boy asks if this ability was intentionally granted by the development team. Arthur replies, no, Wendy is connected to the Prodigy network solely for monitoring purposes, but they never imagined that she could alter the system on her own initiative. Meanwhile, back on the scene with Joe, the system rejects his leave request. He is obliged to comply with the time stipulated in his contract, and is immediately reassigned to a new location. Back in the present, the ship carrying the hybrids lands on the surface. Wendy, thanks to her heightened sense of hearing, detects the characteristic sound of the aliens. However, she seems to be the only one who hears them. The others don't perceive anything out of the ordinary. The team leader approaches Kirsch to inform him that the tower they are to inspect has 80 floors above the surface and 20 levels underground. At that moment, communications are completely down. He also expresses his growing concern the gas filling some areas could catch fire. The ship's fuel is unstable. The munitions pose a critical risk, not to mention radiation exposure. But above all, what worries him most is that they were promised reinforcements, and instead, only these people were sent. While the chief lists his concerns, Wendy begins manipulating the ship's interface, altering surveillance camera feeds around them slightly, and Smee play around, not paying much attention. Kirsch, trying to calm the situation, assures the chief that their group is part of a special unit directly under the command of the founder of Prodigy. The chief then asks, what exactly is Wendy doing? Kirsch, instead of answering, directly inquires about the team's status and asks if there is a doctor among those sent. He is informed that there is one assigned to Rashidi's squad, but that they have not reported in since the mission began. After a thorough search among the surveillance channels, Wendy finally locates Joe through one of the building's cameras. He is trapped inside an elevator, and is on the 65th floor. Without wasting time, Wendy decides to go in search of him. Kirsch, noticing her determination, orders Slightly to accompany her to protect her. He assigns the rest of the hybrids the task of staying with him to assess the structural damage to the facility, and collect all relevant data for later analysis. On the other hand, Boy is pleased that the hybrids are sending data, but his assistant informs him that Yutani is calling him. Yutani tells him that today has been a very expensive day. Boy nods without mentioning the loss of lives. Yutani assures him that he has something that belongs to them. Boy responds that to be fair, it fell from the sky and destroyed one of their buildings. Yutani points out that he will receive compensation, that she should only send the invoice. Boy comments that he has men securing the place and asks if there is anything he should know. However, she only clarifies that the ship studied deep space and that everything it contains is her property, so she requests permission to send a team to secure the ship and recover what belongs to her. Boy replies that he cannot authorize something like that yet since the tower is unstable. Yutani insists, but Boy warns her that any intrusion into Prodigy territory will be considered a hostile act. That's what lawyers are for, so their people can talk to his and negotiate a treaty. Then she hangs up. Boy excitedly tells his assistant that he wants what's on that ship. Meanwhile, Wendy hears the alien noise again while Kirsch and the other hybrids enter the ship. Suddenly, Nips comments that she misses taking baths. Kirsch orders them to keep moving, saying that fear is for animals, and they are not one of them. There they find a kind of plant. Nips wants to leave, and Curly suggests destroying it, but Dell approaches and says that scientists don't kill. Kirsch warns him to be careful, it's an extraterrestrial species, and they don't know what it's capable of. He then tells Curly to take Nips and Smee to look for something to capture. They enter the room where the soldiers were eliminated by the worm-like creatures. One of them is still feeding on a body, but runs away upon seeing them. Upon entering, they discover more creatures, including a cat drinking from a pool of blood. The scene becomes more cloudy when the cat's eye falls out and begins to move on its own. It looks like an octopus with several pupils. The octopus eye attacks Nips, but she frees herself, and the others manage to catch it. Wendy and Slightly reach the stairs where Joe was. There they find his backpack, and then the xenomorph's claws marked on the wall. Meanwhile, Joe tries to locate his team without success until he approaches someone. It is Private Burgerfeld. The soldier asks, "Where the hell is everyone?" There are no communications, and it seems that the entire building is going to collapse. Joe asks him if he has seen any large animals, but Burgerfeld says that he has not seen anything. Then they hear noises, a knock on a door, and a man comes out. They are some millionaires who are celebrating a party there without knowing that a ship fell on them. They refuse to evacuate, arguing that if something serious had happened, Boy would have informed them since they are part of the same social circle. Joe notices that the alien is hiding in a sculpture behind Burgerfeld. He tells the soldier to move away. Burgerfeld turns and comes face to face with the alien, who eliminates him instantly. The millionaire storms out in a rage at the noise, and the alien enters the room and kills all the party guests. Joe is about to suffer the same fate as everyone else at the party, but is saved by Captain Morrow, who electrocutes him, and the xenomorph Morrow then applies a liquid to the alien to create a sort of cocoon or membrane in order to trap it and take it away. Meanwhile, Tutos and Kirch observe the plant and comment that although it manifests as flora, it could be fauna. Kirch then meets with the other hybrid. Smee informs him that they caught a creature that was inside the cat. Kirch tries to open the container, but Nips stops him. Kirch approaches a monitor and discovers that the ship has been collecting specimens. My question is, are those specimens still alive? Meanwhile, Morrow prepares to use the elevator to transport the alien, but is stopped by some soldiers who must assess the security of the building. Morrow explains that he thought of using the elevator because the stairs are blocked. One of the soldiers asks him what he is transporting, and he replies that he is only supplies. Suddenly, the alien moves. They try to arrest Morrow, but the alien awakens and eliminates the soldiers, leaving Morrow alive. Kirsch finds in the system a location where alien eggs are stored, so he asks Smee to head there since he will send Wendy to secure the area and prevent entry until the biosecurity team arrives. Joe wakes up and sees a baseball that brings back memories of his father when they were watching baseball games together. At that moment, Wendy and Slightly appear, although Joe doesn't know that she is his sister in another body. He then discovers that Slightly is synthetic like Wendy. The three leave the place since Wendy has received direct orders from Kirsch to Head to the front section of the ship where SME is waiting to secure a critical cargo invasive specimens that pose a risk since they could escape and reproduce out of control as they advance through the corridors. Slightly reveals a shocking secret to Joe. Wendy is actually his sister Marcy. He explains that they were both seriously ill children and that their consciousnesses were transferred to synthetic bodies as the only option survival. Wendy for her part confesses to Joe that she has been constantly watching him through the system screens, and that everything that happened is in a way his responsibility. He wanted to go to Mars, and she was the one who prevented him. Joe cannot assimilate what he hears. His father had told him that Marcy had died. Wendy then explains that when she fell ill she received a visit from the boy genius who proposed a solution to her father. He could save her, but he had to take her. From then on has lived under the care of Kirsch and Dame. Joe, confused, tries to understand, and Wendy clarifies that it was the only way to survive and that no one could know because it was an absolute secret. The boy genius assured his father that she would be fine, although she could never return. Slightly hurries them, reminding them that time is limited. They continue moving forward through the ship, while Joe asks Wendy questions to confirm her identity. She answers each one accurately until he finally recognizes her as his sister. Both stop for a moment and hug each other tightly. When they arrive they find the alien eggs. Wendy listens to the sounds they make while boy watches them closely from a remote screen. Joe approaches an egg. Just then the alien appears, drags him violently, and takes him away. Wendy runs after him without hesitation.